We're currently about a quarter of the way through the season for the Chicago Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at where the Bulls stand and a lot of kind of the preseason concerns for the team, what's been better, what's been worse than expected coming into the season, and where do the Bulls look like they're headed. We're also going to look at a trade rumor regards to Nikola Vucevic going to the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Chicago Bulls get 2 games added to their schedule. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. We're at the quarter mark. This is an interesting place of the season because things aren't nearly done at all by any stretch of the imagination. We're 22 games into the season, actually a little bit over the quarter mark if we're being technical with things. But you know, with that said, there's some things that have gone right for the Chicago Bulls, some things that have gone wrong. We know the Bulls right now sit at 9-13 on the season. This is a season where the Bulls came in, and a lot of bettors had the Bulls at 28.5 wins. Now, the Bulls right now are on pace to win about 32 games, right? 32 games, and we'll get into, into the plus and the minus on that when it comes down to it. But what has happened so far at the quarter way mark of the season for the Chicago Bulls? And that's just this. Most of the preseason concerns have been proven true. Not all of them, but most of them. The defense. We knew that the defense was not going to be very good, right? But the Bulls have the worst defense in the league when it comes down to it. The only team worse than them technically is the Washington Wizards. They're barely an NBA team, so we knew that. But for the Bulls to go such a stark difference from defense to offense, right? Because the offense has been really good when you look at the metrics of it and where it ranks, but points per game and the three-point shooting. But the defense has been absolutely god-awful. And Billy Donovan said that. He said that on media day. He said that after training camp. Every time Billy Donovan got to talk about this team, he talked about the defense. And so, yeah, the defense has been extremely bad for the Chicago Bulls. Also, the Kobe White and Josh Giddey fit hasn't necessarily been terrible offensively, but it's been bad net-wise for the Chicago Bulls, right? In 402 minutes on the court together, the Chicago Bulls are negative 34 plus minus in that time. They have a negative 1.7 net rating, a 121.5 defensive rating, and a 119 offensive rating, which isn't too bad, but that defensive rating really overcomes that, and that's really what it comes down to. I'm not going to say that the Kobe and Giddey fit overall may be terrible for the future, but I think if you're going to have these guys, and this is something that the Bulls have to look at as your backcourt going forward, you got to find a mobile defensive big. You just almost have to, right? You have to change what else is around these guys if you want these guys to be good. Like, there's been some things that look good. The passing is good when they're on the court together, right? Some really good things happen there. The assist ratio, Kobe White's actually turned into a really good catch and shoot player at 41%. I think he's shooting right now on catch and shoots. He's turned into one of the better catch and shoot players in the league. That's why I say not necessarily labeling it as bad. It's just been odd because while the positives are there in some instances, there's negatives there that just you can't really build a winning team around some of the negatives that we have there. And and again, lineups are really based off who and what you use, but also how you supplement skill sets of players. And as of right now, the Bulls don't really have the roster to supplement the skill set or overcome the the defensive limitations of those players. And that's where you're really seeing that at. But overall, the Kobe and Josh Giddey fit. There's been some signs of positivity offensively, some big signs of concerns defensively, and then overall, too, there's been some signs of concern. While the team operates good offensively with those two, the individually, when they're on the court together, it hasn't necessarily been the best yet either, right? So there's some still kinks that need to work out. The 22 games into playing together. Kobe's missed a game or so. So, it is what it is when it comes down to that. But just something to keep looking out for. That was one of the things during preseason we talked about, if this Josh Giddey and Kobe White backcourt is going to work together. And so far, the numbers point to Josh Giddey and Kobe White are both individually better when they're out there with Ayo Dosunmu as their backcourt mate, not just with him out there because he's been playing some 4 for the Bulls, but when he's the backcourt mate next to either one of these guys, the numbers are generally better. So that's something that the Bulls have to look at as well. Modest Vucevic's play and minutes have been inconsistent. That was another concern by many Bulls fans coming into this season. Will Modest actually play? And it's been real inconsistent, but it's starting to trend up. And I want to acknowledge that it's starting to trend up. But with Billy Donovan, it's always that thing that you're just like, okay, is it going to maintain though? You always kind of worry about what's going to happen with Billy Donovan if he's going to be consistent with those type of things. But overall, it's trending up, but still very inconsistent minutes for Modest Vucevic. He's the 10th most played Bull when it comes down to it. And, you just want to see those things improve, especially as he's showing more flashes. And we'll see. He's one of the least played rookies in the lottery. He's one of the least played rookies in his draft class. But again, those things are starting to trend up. So don't want to spend a lot of time on where they've been. I do want to acknowledge it, but hopefully it's going to go up. And hopefully we start seeing this thing with Modest Vucevic that, he earns the minutes. That's the first thing, right? I'm not mad at anybody earning minutes or being forced to earn minutes. But like I questioned in yesterday's episode, I still got to look at Billy Donovan and say, all right, how are you coaching him between those times? Not just saying, hey, boom, you only get minutes if it's this. What are you doing to coach them up, right? And so hopefully that happens. We could see the continual growth from Modest Vucevic because, listen, Modest has shown some things. Not a whole lot. I'm not going to act like Modest it's been all great. No, I mean, there's still been some concern defensively. There's been some concerns with efficiency from the field overall. But like I said, a lot of those things are starting to trend up as he's playing more minutes, as he's acclimating more, as he's getting more used to what the NBA game entails. We're starting to see those things starting to trend up for Modest. So hopefully that trend continues for him. And as we see him play more or see him play better, he plays more. That's really what you want to look at when it comes down to it as well. So let's hope that that's the case. Modest Vucevic is averaging the 24th most points per game of any rookie, so take that for what you will. Minutes he's still extremely low at, man. He's 29th overall in minutes per game as far as in his rookie class, but it's on the rise. He was even lower than that midway part of the season. So let's hope that trend continues. And when we do the halfway mark, that we're seeing much better things from Lonzo Ball. Another one of the concerns that has proven, true is Pete Will. I mean, listen, he's been out with injury, but he's not taking that next step. He's not. Now, he's been really solid for the team defensively when he's out there. You guys know I've been one that I do acknowledge what P. Will has brought for the Bulls defensively when he's been out there on the court, and it has been noticeable in that case. And it's not just about the offense, right? So many people make it just about the offense for P. Will. That's just not his role on this team. I get it. Passive P has still been a thing, and that's always going to be a concern there. But overall, how Billy Donovan seems to be using him is really being the defensive versatility. He's guarding a lot of power forwards. He's guarding a lot of centers. He's guarding wing players still as well. So, he's being really used in that defensive light. And so that's the thing when it comes down to it. Teams, when Patrick Williams is on the court, they're shooting the ball less efficiently. They're averaging less points per 100 possessions. So all those things are still there as far as the defensive numbers. But offensively, it's still been a negative bag for P. Will. The Bulls are negative 6.7 points worse per 100 possessions when P. Will is on the court. But again, the defense is maybe overcoming some of that, but not enough. It's still an overall negative 5.7 differential when P. Will is on the court. And so for the Bulls fans that thought, hey, you take away DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams is going to have more opportunities. We're going to see a better Patrick Williams. He hasn't done anything to show he's taken that next step, but he is still being the defensive player that he's been for the Chicago Bulls. And, that's a big thing as well. Another thing that has been a concern for Bulls fans coming into the season that's been proven true is Billy Donovan still doing Billy Donovan things. This is the Winton Mahorn, segment. Shout out to my boy Winton. Billy Donovan still been Billy Donovan. It is what it is. Still, the lineups are still weird at some points in times. He still takes players out when they're hot, when we kind of need them. When he understands when he needs to bring players back into the lineup after they rest. It's after runs already happen. They're deep in the runs, the timeout management, the challenges. All of Billy Donovan's kind of concerns has still been very loud. Not playing Modest Vucevic. So, those things are always going to be there for Billy. That's just at this point, we just got to understand the limitations of Billy Donovan as a coach. Those are some of them, and they've still been evident. They've still been loud, and there's really been no signs of those things changing in a hugely meaningful way for Billy Donovan in his coaching philosophies. The one best thing that he's done is turned over the defense to Wes Unseld Jr., but then it's we're not a great defensive team no matter what. I don't even think Tom Thibodeau can scheme this team to be a plus defensive team. So there's that aspect of it. But, overall, Billy Donovan, still been Billy Donovan. And then injuries. The Bulls have had these nagging injuries. We've seen Lonzo miss 13 games. We've seen P. Will. He's been out since the end of November. Zach has missed some time. Like, it's just happened, right? But I will say this. We haven't had the major injuries. I guess maybe unless you want to say that Lonzo Ball, because it almost was season ending, maybe that is more major than what, we kind of remember it to be because he's back on the court now. But injuries have still been a thing, and that's going to be a thing for every team. We haven't been as ravaged by injuries as we have been in the past or some other teams in the NBA in this season, but injuries have definitely still been a thing for the Chicago Bulls. But what are some positives mid-season for the team? The team's offense overall, like not only the pace, right? I think so much is made by the Chicago Bulls in the pace because they do play with the highest pace in the NBA, but it's that they really did turn a negative for them into a positive. And while the team still has its struggles, I do want to spend some time acknowledging that. Like, we're averaging the fourth most points in the NBA at 118 points per game. Like, that's crazy to be there where the Bulls were previous seasons. We're the sixth best three-point shooting team per percentage. And then when you look at three-point attempts as well, we're the third highest team. We're averaging 43 three-point attempts per game and hitting that at one of the best three-point rates in the league. And that's something, if we had the defense that we had the last couple of years with this offense, this would be a team that we're talking about contending for 8th or 7th seed, but we're not that, right? And so those things have been evident. The Bulls have really changed their offensive identity. That shot profile that they've talked so much about wanting to change for the last 2 years, it finally has changed, and I got to give some credit for that. It's difficult. Now, the makeup of the team has also changed, but they really have changed that for sure. The play of Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Both these guys have been a revelation for the people that doubted them in the offseason. It just is what it is. Whether it was the national media with Zach LaVine, whether it was our own Bulls fans for Nikola Vucevic, these two players have been playing great at near all-star levels. Nikola Vucevic is playing like one of the best offensive centers in the game of basketball. Zach LaVine is more locked in and engaged defensively and consistently than what I've ever seen him do in the Chicago Bulls career. And so those things have really been a positive for the Chicago Bulls, as well as Lonzo Ball when he's actually out there on the court. Yes, he still has the minutes restriction. Yeah, the shot, it kind of comes and goes at times for him. But you look at the activity, you look at the Bulls are still a net positive when Lonzo Ball is on the court by a large margin. So, those type of things, you got to acknowledge what Lonzo's able to do for this team after the years, almost 3 years of being out of basketball. That's major. That's when Lonzo has been on the court. Again, only 97 minutes played on the season so far for Lonzo. But in those 97 minutes, the Bulls have a positive point differential of plus 14.6. That's crazy. Then also the points per 100 possessions. We average 116.7 points per 100 possessions more when Lonzo's on the court. Now, that's going to be a really skewed stat for him with the fact he's only played 97 minutes. So, that's going to be a really skewed stat, but we're effective field goal percentage better, higher, right? So all those things are there when Lonzo's on the court for the Bulls. And I think when you have young players in Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips and Modest Bucilis that are trying to develop, it's really having a guy like Lonzo out there with them is really going to help their development hugely as well. And Lonzo has talked about how that helps. Also, Jalen Smith is going to live up to that contract. It just is what it is. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about Jalen Smith. And really, honestly, I think that in some ways, Jalen Smith is not talked about enough. Now, he is stepping into Andre Drummond's role, so that would make some sense. When Jalen Smith is on the basketball court, the Chicago Bulls are plus 2.4 points for our 2.4 point differential. For a team that has a negative 47 point differential, that's actually huge for this team when it comes down to it. So that's really good to see from this basketball team, is being able to have that type of point differential when Jalen Smith is on the court. And that's despite us averaging negative 4.2 points less per 100 possessions when he's on the court, but it's still net positive because defensively, and again, Jalen Smith is not even the best on-ball defender, but clearly his weak side defense is having an effect for this team. Opposing teams are negative 6.6 points worse per 100 possessions when he's on the court. They shoot a worse field goal percentage of almost 2% when he's on the court. Those are huge. And when he's on the court as well, the teams average 3.4% more turnovers when he's on the court. He's having a really good impact for the Chicago Bulls. And for that contract that we signed him to, yeah, he looks like he's going to be still as well. Dalen Terry's starting to look like an NBA player. THT has been solid in the minutes that he's been given. Overall, those are some really positive things. So with all of that, where do the Bulls stand right now, a quarter of the way through the season? We're 9-13 on the year. We're on pace to win 32 games. We have a negative 4.3 point differential, which, by the way, the reason why I point that out, no team has made the postseason with a point differential that low ever. We're talking about even in the play-in, right? So it's important for the Bulls to get that up now. Look, like the last couple of games have actually taken a lot. The Bulls had almost a negative 6 point differential for most part of the season, so they've gotten it down quite a bit. And so there's still enough time to try to turn that thing around. But that really is, like I said, no stat is a catch-all stat. But if you really look at how the trends of point differential actually holds true throughout NBA history, it is a stat that you can really look at if you're trying to look at how a team is really trending. That's usually a really good sign of that. So the Bulls have shown some signs of improvement. But the question is can they sustain that? And that's always the question with the Chicago Bulls team, is that can it be sustained? And they can only answer that on the basketball court. We'll see where that goes for this team. All right, next topic I want to get into is this proposed trade that will send Nikola Vucevic to the Los Angeles Lakers. And I don't think that this is realistic, but I do want to talk about this one. This one, of course, came from Bleacher Report. It's that the Bulls received Jalen Hood-Schifino and Rui Hachimura, plus a 2025 second-round pick that the Lakers have from the Clippers, and the Lakers' own 2027 second-round pick. Now, we have heard that the asking price for Vooch, or kind of the expected value, is 2 second-round picks, but you're getting Jalen Hood-Schifino, who is still a player that hasn't played a lot of minutes. And ultimately, does Jalen Hood-Schifino turn into a really good player in the NBA? Probably not, and it's another guard yet again, right? So there's that aspect of it. Now, Rui Hachimura, that's a different one that you want to look at, right? So, Rui Hachimura is a solid enough player, but again, I get it that we need some size, but he pretty much is just duplicating skill sets that we already have for some players. And so in that, you're getting a player in Jalen Hood-Schifino that was taken in the first round back in 2023. You're getting Rui Hachimura, who's a solid enough role player that can play some solid defense. And for what it's worth, the Bulls do need defense. He is starting for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's averaging almost 12 points per game, 45% shooting. He's more aggressive offensively than P. Will, for example. And, he's still young at 26 years old, so he could fit that timeline for the Chicago Bulls as well. He shoots the ball 43% from three-point range over the last 2 seasons of his NBA career, so he could come in and actually help the Bulls with a lot of what they need. This, though, would feel like a move that is a move that you get because you're taking another move. Now, you would also have to waive THT to make this deal happen unless you did make another move where you sent out more players than what you took back. But to get all this back for Nikola Vucevic is actually a pretty good value. I'll say this, it's a pretty good value. Is it the value for overall when you look at Vooch and the risk and the fact that he's expiring next year and his age? When you look at how he's playing this year, though, it's probably not a really good value that people are going to look at for a player that's putting up all-star caliber numbers. But overall, if the Bulls were to make this trade, I look at this and I'd say, all right, it's okay, right? I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed by it. It's an okay trade. And I think you're getting back some value, of course, in that. And the Bulls clearly are going to be a worse team. Size is going to take another hit. At that point, you're moving Jalen Smith to starting. Your only other backup big is Adama Sanogo, so maybe you're going to play him. So maybe there's some things there. But overall, this is a move, again, that it seems like it's more built around to help the Lakers than necessarily help the Bulls. But maybe this is the offer that they're going to get for Nikola Vucevic. You got to ask yourself that. But I wanted to bring this trade up because it's an interesting enough trade, but I don't know. I still would hope that the Bulls hold out to see if they get something better than what this offer is. But like I said, Rui Hachimura is a really solid player, really solid role player. And because of that, you're getting a really, really solid young role player back at a position of need. If you do move, which, there's a lot of talk around P. Will potentially being moved at this trade deadline. If you were to move P. Will, replace him with Rui Hachimura, who's an older player, does that help the Chicago Bulls win basketball games? Yeah, technically, but is that what the Bulls really are looking for? It's a lot of up in air things about it, but overall, it's a solid deal. It's a solid deal. I'm not going to call it a great deal, but it's a solid enough deal where you're getting value back, and that's what I think the Bulls are really looking at. Plus, Jalen Hood-Schifino on basically the same contract as Patrick Williams, $17 million this year, $18.2 million next year. Then he's an unrestricted free agent after that point in time. So it's not like you're attaching long-term money. He's about it, and you're getting a little bit of cap flexibility back for trading Nikola Vucevic because he is going to make less than what Vooch will make next year. So there's that aspect of things to look at as well. But overall, like I said, it's a deal. And I'm not saying it's a bad deal. It's not a great deal, but it is a deal. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Before we get out of here, though, one last thing. The Bulls got 2 games added to their schedule. There's a nice gap in the Chicago Bulls schedule between the end of this week, with the 8th to the 19th. We had 11 days scheduled off. And, that's where the Bulls, with the Bulls not moving forward into the NBA Cup, they added 2 games onto the Bulls schedule. So now, instead of having that large gap between the Philadelphia 76ers game on the 8th and the Boston Celtics game on the 19th of December, we now face off against Charlotte on Friday, December 13th. And then we face off against the Toronto Raptors December 16th. That one's in Toronto. The Charlotte game is at home in Chicago. But the Bulls still get a nice off streak there. Between the 8th and the 5th and the 8th and the 13th, that's 5 days between those 2 games. So the Bulls are going to get still some time off at the end of this week where they can get some practices in, where they can get those type of things in. Then we can see how they attack it. But overall, I wanted to cover that, keep you guys abreast. So now the Bulls have their full 82-game schedule. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. Send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.